want to walk you around what we're seeing. You saw those images here on America's Newsroom. We were showing you what we were seeing here on the ground. A lot of those protesters have kind of gone away because they have all this federal law enforcement out here that's saying, get out of here. This is the federal building. You're not allowed to be here. You can peacefully protest, but that's not what was happening according to the Fed. So another long line of these agents. These are agents from the SRT team as well. So these are some of their, best people who are trained very tactical on what to do here on the streets of Minneapolis. They've had a huge ICE operation happening here in the state of Minnesota. Another live look here. So this is some of the Border Patrol, the federal agents that are here. And then behind them, Dana and Bill, you can kind of see that is the federal building. So they have this line here to make sure that the protesters can't get through. And there's not as many protesters as there was because they were able to kind of push them out. At least 4 people were arrested after the feds say they put their hands on a federal agent, and then also some pepper balls were fired, some tear gas as well. And then showing you here, this woman saying, I have hand warmers for you, but no weapons, and you guys have killed my neighbors. So people out here have already made up their minds to a point whether the feds are still investigating exactly what happened with this woman and the shooting here in Minneapolis area. Some people say that DHS and those federal agents murdered this woman, but the feds say that the officer who was hit by a car, according to them, was acting in self-defense. Minneapolis didn't want a lot of these federal agents here, according to the mayor and also the governor of the state. So we'll keep an eye on it.
Alexis, can I just ask you quickly? So about a half an hour ago, the scene was very different, and I know you were in a different location and you moved there. So I'm assuming they called in more resources. Were these officers here now? Typically, if they were there in Minneapolis, they wouldn't have to be at the protest. They'd be out doing what President Trump has asked them to do, which is to try to track down criminal illegal aliens?
That's right. Yeah, some of them were out on operations because that's what they're doing. They're not just here either for arresting people who are in the country illegally, according to the feds. They're here for that ongoing federal fraud investigation, but some of them had to be pulled out here. So that's why they have these extra people that are out here on the ground. They do have gas masks on, too, because, as I said, they use the pepper balls and some tear gas to tell these people to get back. So they did increase security out here, Dana.
All right, Alexis McAdams, thank you. We'll stay in touch.
So now Republicans standing behind law enforcement, Democrats accusing the ICE agent of murder. Vice President Vance posting this on X. I want every ICE officer to know that their president, vice president, and the entire administration stands behind them, to the radicals assaulting them, doxing them, and threatening them. Congratulations. We're going to work even harder to enforce the law. End tweet. Acting ICE Director Todd Lyons is here. And sir, good morning to you. There's a lot happening right now that we don't know about. Let's begin in Minneapolis. Is ICE back on the streets? And if so, what are they doing this morning?
Hey, Bill, good seeing you. Yeah, no, ICE is back doing our law enforcement mission. We took a pause yesterday afternoon after that deadly shooting and incident to check on our staff and our officers and the scene, make sure everything was secure, but we were back in the fight. That's less more than an hour later. So we continued operations in Minnesota. We're there today. We're still conducting operations, our daily law enforcement mission in all 50 states and territories right now. So we're going to keep doing the work.
So on that, just to follow up on that, there's been a lot of talk today about numbers. What are the numbers? How strong is your force in Minneapolis now?
So we've put more resources there, not only to address the ongoing fraud investigation, which is extremely important. I think American people want to know exactly what happened with that money, but also for the large amount of criminally illegal aliens that are in Minnesota. We have the most largest contingent we ever had in an ICE operation out there right now. And I think the numbers speak for themselves. You know, you can see just yesterday, even though we had that incident, we're still arresting more and more people because sanctuary jurisdictions are like a magnet. It brings these illegal aliens to an area that they know they can hide in plain sight, and that's why we have to be up there. If sanctuary jurisdictions worked with us and turned over criminal illegal aliens in a timely fashion, or when they know that they're a public safety threat, we wouldn't have to be out on the street. I would much rather have my men and women of ICE and our other federal partners take custody of these individuals inside a controlled, safe environment, not have to go out there and deal with the people like you're seeing right now.
Let's go back to the shooting from yesterday. There's a lot of hot takes immediately while the investigation's ongoing. Here's some Democrats accusing ICE of murder.
This officer not only needs to be fired and suspended, he needs to be charged with murder.
What we saw today was a criminal murder a woman and shoot her in the head.
We have seen them terrorize so many of citizens in the 5th District and across Minnesota, and that has tragically led to this murder that we all watched on TV.
What do you want people at home to know about this situation?
You know, the big thing about the situation, it was totally avoidable. You know, unfortunately, some of those elected officials you showed there are some of the ones that are hyping up that political rhetoric from the beginning, from when I became the acting director back in March. You constantly heard that we're the Gestapo, we're kidnapping people, we're arresting U.S. citizens, actively resist us, you know, push back against ICE, impede their operations. And that's what's happening. This is all avoidable because if local jurisdictions would work with us, and if the American public would just not interfere with a law enforcement operation. We can take ICE out of the equation, Dana, just any law enforcement operation. No citizen should walk up in the middle of a traffic stop here with Metro PD in Washington, D.C. You shouldn't, you know, go up to a sheriff that's conducting a lawful operation in your home county or town. So these individuals that are listening to this political rhetoric and that are following these guidance, will go out there and impede us, you know, threaten officers, be legal observers, as they say. It's just not right. They shouldn't interject themselves in a, you know, potentially deadly situation.
Sir, the governor of Minnesota last night mentioned Portland, L.A., Minneapolis, Chicago. He may have said New York. I can't remember. What city is next?
You know, Bill. The governor and the mayor both said they want ICE out of Minneapolis. ICE has been there for decades. You know, going back to the inception of the agency back in 2003, we've had a Minnesota field office, a St. Paul field office. But we're going to be across the nation just doing our regular law enforcement mission. You will see surge up in locations where we do have those high concentrations of criminal illegal aliens that were released back into cities and neighborhoods by sanctuary jurisdictions. You're going to see that. But the president made it clear that we're going to make America safe again. And we're going to be out there doing our law enforcement mission. You know, our hearts and prayers go out to everyone involved in this situation. But at the end of the day, that question that's always asked to me, what keeps me up, is the safety of the men and women of ICE. And unfortunately, you know, citizens impeding, getting involved in a law enforcement situation, it's what's really putting a lot of people in harm, and it needs to stop.